There are Republicans and Democrats alike that say they want to see elections in Venezuela. The president has said it's too soon to do that right now. But is there a timeline for elections in Venezuela? Is he committed to seeing that this year, for example?
You just said the president has answered that question, so I will reiterate what the president has said a few times now to all of you, which is that it's too premature and too early to dictate a timetable for elections in Venezuela right now.
Love the use of the word dictate. Sort of fits with the form of government we're working on here. Love her big smile. Hey, we taken over this country and we get to tell them what to do. Why exactly would we dictate to them? I mean, after all, you guys are saying it was bad that he was a dictator. It was bad that he rejected the results of an election. And you can at least admit in Venezuela when it's bad that someone does that. So wouldn't it be good to have an election and let the actual winner win? Why is it that we would determine that? But anyway, Leavitt is happy with all this. It's her job to be happy with all of it, to smile, to emote to the extent that her face is still capable of doing so. But that said, she continued talking and there was a little bit of a slip up. Her machine gun mouth got ahead of her a little bit. Take a look.
The president has been adamant that he is now in charge of Venezuela, but Delcy Rodriguez said the government of Venezuela runs her country, no one else, saying, quote, there's no external agent governing Venezuela. So which one is it?
Let me just be very clear. This is the first time that I've addressed Venezuela from the podium since being back and since the historic and incredibly successful military operation, law enforcement operation conducted by our United States military. The president's entire national security team is in close correspondence with the interim authorities in Venezuela. We obviously have maximum leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela right now. We're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
Yeah, it's a law enforcement operation. She got there eventually. She was honest, briefly, accidentally for a bit when she called it a military operation, but that's what it was. And again, oh God, oh, they love their little euphemisms. We have maximum leverage. What leverage do we have? Why don't you just say it? The woman who is now the president of that country, if she doesn't do what we say, we will murder her. That's literally what she means. And by the way, and under what justification, by the way, would we have to assassinate the head of state of Venezuela? Like we say Maduro was the head of a narco trafficking organization, although if you've been following that, they actually dropped that information from the indictment. They're not even claiming anymore. They don't even talk about the drugs anymore. It's all about how we're gonna get oil, which that has nothing to do with why we took that guy. Supposedly it had to do with drugs. Are we gonna kill her because of the drugs? They're not even claiming that. They're just saying we now kill heads of state that won't do what we want. And we're gonna do it for a while. So he was asked, what's a precise time range for how long we'll remain the leader of Venezuela? Would it be 3 months, 6 months, a year, longer? Trump said, I would say much longer than 1 year. And I am old enough to remember Iraq and Afghanistan. Yeah, I think he's probably right. I think this probably will be much longer. It'll be a year or 5 years or 10 years of nation building in Venezuela, which of course is what Donald Trump explicitly campaigned on. Yaz, what do you think?
Yeah, this is so much going on all at once, right? And the intent at some point is to inundate people and to confuse people. But this has already gotten so much comparison between George W. Bush's 9/11 and his invasion of Iraq and what Donald Trump is doing here. So much so that they're using a lot of the same rhetoric that we heard back then. We heard weapons of mass destruction back then. We heard weapons of mass destruction here too. And they said like all these drugs are weapons of mass destruction in a less literal sense against the American people, right? It's an attack on the American people. But Trump didn't have the buy-in for a lot of this, and his strategy was all over the place. He said they have drugs. We said, where are the drugs? We don't see the drugs. And then he said, you know what? Now that we're here, we're just gonna run the country, and you know what? We're just gonna take all the oil because they stole the oil from us in the first place. The oil that is in their land, on their land, underneath their ground. That's our oil. That's what he's trying to sell to the American people. And unfortunately, a lot of his own supporters aren't gonna look into that and see that he's not really telling the truth, surprise, surprise. And so they'll be like, yeah, I guess that's our oil in Venezuela that we need to go and get back. Even though that's not the reason that he has been, attacking and taking over all of these ships and killing all these fishermen and all these things. Oil had nothing to do with any of that, right? Oil had nothing to do with why he went in and kidnapped Maduro in the first place, right? And the thing is, like, whenever you say something like, "Oh, why did he kidnap Maduro?" People assume that you're a fan of Maduro's. No, I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm not saying he's a good leader. I'm just saying it's not my problem. Not right now. As far as this country is concerned, especially the country that elected Donald Trump, right? Largely on a platform of an America First platform, a Make America Great Again platform, right? Nobody voted for us to just enter into another Middle East-like war, this time in South America. It's the exact same thing, this time in South America, right? South America is the great untapped land. He's also got feelers out in Nigeria, very similar situations that we're dealing with here. And so when you look at it on a global scale, none of this is new, right? The PR aspect of how they try to sell it to the American people will change from time to time, right? George W. Bush got very lucky that they attacked us on September 11th, that some brown people attacked us on September 11th. So he said, you know what, I'm just gonna go invade this other country that's nearby, and the people, they won't know the difference anyway, right? So he invaded Iraq, and he had, what was it, a 72% approval rating in 2003 whenever he did that. This time, Trump doesn't have the same thing. He does have a lot of buy-in from his most ardent supporters, but a lot of MAGA is also saying, why are we spending money on this? Why are we starting any of this right now?
We will define our vital interests in ways that are reasonable and that make sense to ordinary Americans. This is the approach and mindset that shapes the department's focus. As a result, the War Department will not be distracted by democracy building, interventionism, undefined wars, regime change, climate change, woke moralizing, and feckless nation building.
Except that they are in fact gonna do about half of that. To be clear, they still refuse to accept that climate change is happening. But the rest of the stuff, no, they're gonna do that. The interventions are now coming fast and frenzied every day. There's another country that they're threatening to intervene with. They've already done regime change. They're guaranteeing nation building. Really, the only thing he was being super honestly about was that it's not gonna be about democracy. We're not going to expand democracy. All that stuff that we pretend to say about Maduro having been a dictator and, oh, isn't it better for Venezuela that we got rid of him? We're just saying we're gonna choose the next dictator. That's it. And thus, he's also right that there will be no woke moralizing about principles or philosophy or anything like that. And not just in Venezuela, of course, but coming to a Latin American or South American country near you. It could be Mexico, it could be Cuba, it could be Panama, it could be Greenland. By the end of next week, it almost certainly will be at least one of those. My money's on Greenland, although not literally. And the issue is that doing all of that nation building and interventions is expensive. Now, you might believe that, hey, we spend more on our military than basically every other country combined. Shouldn't that be enough? And after all, the Trump administration has been saying, we gotta rein in government spending, get rid of that waste, fraud, and abuse. No, not when it comes to the military. Because a $1 trillion military budget, that's nothing. Get a hold of a $1.5 trillion budget. That is what Donald Trump is now previewing on Truth Social, saying that after negotiations with all of these people, I have determined that for the capital G good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, leaving off that they're troubled and dangerous because of him, our military budget should not be $1 trillion, but rather 1.5 trillion. This will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to. Blah, 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 a whole bunch of BS after that. So I just want to remind everyone, some of you might be living in Colorado. They were gonna build this pipeline to give you fresh water to an area that's largely red, it's conservative. It costs $500,000. We don't have money for that. We don't have money for SNAP or TANF. We don't have money for Medicaid. We don't have money for literally any of that stuff. You know what we do have money for? A lot of it, $500 extra billion. And only then will we have a cool military. For some reason, $1 trillion for 1 year. Not like building from scratch a military for $1 trillion. The maintenance costs of $1 trillion a year just doesn't cut it anymore, Yaz. What do you think?
This is appalling. This is to be expected though, right? There's no reason that the American country we've never invaded another country just because they have a bad leader there and they're not doing democracy right, or they're not doing it well enough, that we have to just like go in there and help them, right? It's not our prerogative to do that. The only time we have ever gotten involved in any other country is because there's something in it for us, right? And this is a very expensive money-making operation for a very few corporations and for the American government, and it's expensive for us, for the American people, not for the billionaire American people, but just for the rest of us. And it's not conspiratorial to say that the American military complex, right, whenever it goes out into the world to do its very moralistic missions, a lot of people are making money off of that, right? Including members of Congress, including those corporations that I alluded to earlier. So we need some kind of war, some kind of military operation to sustain our economy in a lot of ways. And on top of that, there's oil. We need the oil from countries like Venezuela and Canada and from the Middle East to sustain our economy here at home. They love to say that the United States is energy independent because we can frack all of our oil, but it's the wrong kind of oil. We still need the other kind that comes from places like Venezuela. And we have to be able to bring it here to places like Texas, like Houston, and refine all that oil. So it's never as simple as, the Venezuelan people really wanted me to go and take out Maduro, so I did that. No, all of this is always about money. It's always been about the economy. It's always been about power. And Trump now is talking about building up this incredible military, as if we don't already have the biggest military in the world, saying it's not good enough for us. We need more, we need bigger, we need better. And he's invading countries like Venezuela already under the pretense of who's gonna do anything about it? Who's gonna stop me? Because there is no military that can take on the American military. So the American military, if we wanna get like old school imperialistic, just like the Russians are doing a little bit, who's gonna stop us? Who's gonna come up here and say, you know what, maybe can you just please not also take Greenland the way you just took Venezuela? He did, he just took Venezuela, he just took over another country, said, we're gonna run it, that's ours, their oil, that's my oil. It doesn't get more imperialistic, more colonistic than that.
100%. Yeah, primarily for the oil, but also for the elements that they keep telling us we need so that we don't fall behind in the world arms race on AI. So, we should break up NATO so that we can do AI. All those indispensable things that we use AI for? Like, I don't know, there's gotta be something, right? I know a lot of like Elon Musk loving incels love undressing 12-year-olds on Grok. I guess that's worth breaking up NATO for, I suppose.